Here's the strange thing about the smartest man in Greece. He won the biggest war in history with a wooden horse and a straight face, and then spent 10 whole years failing to sail a short distance home. One clever idea. 10 years of consequences. Hey friends, welcome back. Tonight we step into the impossible life of Odysseus, from the man who faked madness with a plow to dodge a war, to the night he blinded a mountain-sized giant and then shouted his own name like an idiot, to the 20-year homecoming that ended with a bow no other man alive could bend. Before we sink in, one small thing. If these nights help you, a like and a subscribe mean a lot. No pressure. Only if it feels earned. And drop a comment. Which city are you in tonight? And what time is it there? I read every one. It's my favorite part of this. All right. Lights low. Fan on. If you like that soft hum. Get heavy. Get comfortable. Tonight's story starts now. You wake to the sound of goats, not trumpets, not the roar of a crowd. Goats, somewhere on the hillside below your window, complaining about the wind the way they do every single morning. Salt air drifts in off the water, sharp and cold, carrying the smell of wet rope and yesterday's fish. This is Ithaca. This is your kingdom. And your kingdom, if you're being honest, is a rock, a beautiful rock. But a rock. You are Odysseus, king of this small stony island off the western coast of Greece. And being king here is not the golden fantasy the word suggests. You don't have marble palaces stacked to the clouds. You have a hall with a good roof, a herd of pigs you genuinely care about, and a population of farmers and sailors who will absolutely tell you to your face when your ideas are stupid. Kingship on Ithaca means knowing every goat by temperament. It means settling arguments about whose olive tree crossed whose property line. It means being less a distant god-emperor and more the guy everyone yells for when something breaks. And you are extremely good at it. Not because you're the biggest. You've seen the heroes of your age, men like Ajax built like the side of a barn, men who could throw a boulder at a problem and call it diplomacy. You are not that. You're clever. You're the one who wins the argument before the fight starts, the one who notices the thing nobody else noticed, the one who talks 3 angry men out of a brawl and somehow gets them to thank you afterward. In a world that worships muscle, you've built your whole life on being the smartest person in the room, which sounds like a gift. It mostly gets you volunteered for things. You've got a wife you actually like, which in the age of arranged royal marriages is a small miracle. Penelope. Sharp as you are, patient in ways you are not, capable of outwaiting a rainstorm out of pure stubbornness. And you've got a newborn son, Telemachus, a red wrinkled thing who grips your finger and screams and has no idea what any of this is. You have a home. You have a family. You have a quiet, decent, olive and goats kind of happiness. You have, in other words, everything to lose. Being a king in the age of heroes wasn't about glory. It was about being close enough to the glory that it could reach out and ruin you. The trouble arrives, as trouble usually does, because of a wedding. Years back, before your son, before most of this, half the kings of Greece had gathered to compete for the hand of a woman named Helen. And not just any woman. Helen was said to be the most beautiful person alive, the daughter of a king, the kind of prize that turns reasonable men into circling wolves. Every powerful bachelor in the Greek world showed up to win her, which meant every powerful bachelor in the Greek world was about to become a sore loser, because only one of them could have her. You saw the problem instantly. You always see the problem instantly. That's the curse. You looked at that room full of armed, proud, heavily competitive kings, each one convinced he deserved her, and you did the math. One winner, dozens of losers, all of them with private armies, all of them with egos the size of small nations. The moment Helen chose a husband, the rest were going to feel humiliated, and humiliated kings don't sulk quietly. They invade Dot, so you offered a deal. Not to win Helen for yourself. You'd already figured out you weren't going to. You offered the deal that saved everyone's skin. You proposed that every single suitor swear a binding oath. Whoever Helen married, all the rest would swear to protect that marriage. If anyone ever tried to steal her away, all of them, every last rejected king, would be honor-bound to unite and get her back. It was brilliant. It turned a room full of rivals into a room full of guarantors. Nobody would dare snatch Helen if it meant every king in Greece coming down on his head. They loved it. They all swore. Crisis solved Dot, and in exchange for solving their problem, you asked for one small thing. You asked for the hand of Penelope, Helen's cousin, the clever one, the one you actually wanted. You walked out of the most dangerous marriage market in history, not with a trophy wife, but with the wife you'd chosen with your eyes open. Dot. It was the best deal you ever made. Dot. It was also the worst thing you ever did to yourself. And you wouldn't understand that for years, because here's the thing about a clever oath. It works right up until it doesn't. You built a trap to keep the peace, and you forgot the first rule of traps. Anyone can step in one, including the person who set it. Dot. Fast forward. You're home on your rock, happy, holding your newborn son, thinking that whole business is safely behind you. And then a ship appears on the horizon. Helen is gone. A prince from the distant city of Troy, a young man named Paris, has taken her from her husband and sailed east across the sea. Maybe she was stolen. Maybe she left willingly. The stories argue about it to this day, and honestly nobody in your century is sure either. But the details don't matter to you right now. Only one detail matters. The oath. Every king who swore that day is now honor-bound to sail to Troy and bring Helen back. Every king, which includes the man who invented the oath in the first place, which includes you. You're standing in your own hall, holding your baby, and you can feel the trap you built closing around your own ankle. The word for this is irony. You'll have a lot of time to think about the word for this. And so when the messengers come to Ithaca to call you to war, you do something that is either deeply cowardly or deeply reasonable, depending on how much you like your family. You decide you are not going. You have a newborn son and a wife and a kingdom, and absolutely no desire to sail off to besiege a foreign city over another man's marriage. There's just one problem. You swore the oath too. You can't simply refuse. Refusing would shame you in front of all of Greece and probably get your island invaded. So you don't refuse. You do something much more your style. You pretend to be insane. When the recruiters arrive to collect you for the war, they find the famously clever king of Ithaca out in his field, wearing a farmer's cap plowing his land and doing it wrong. Spectacularly wrong. You've hitched together two animals that should never be yoked together. You're plowing in crooked, senseless lines. And behind the plow, instead of seed, you are sowing the soil with salt, sprinkling handfuls of salt into the dirt like a man planting a crop that will obviously never, ever grow. The message is clear. Look at poor Odysseus. Lost his mind completely. Can't tell salt from seed. Can't possibly go to war. So sad. Anyway, it's a beautiful performance. Committed. Detailed. The kind of long con only you would have the patience to pull off. Wandering your field, muttering, salting the earth, refusing to acknowledge the men who came to fetch you. And it almost works, but one of the recruiters is nearly as clever as you are. A man named Palamedes. And Palamedes looks at your very convincing madness, and instead of buying it, he decides to test it. He walks over to your house. He takes your infant son, Telemachus, out of his cradle, and he sets the baby down on the ground, directly in the path of your plow. Now the whole thing turns on a single second. A truly mad king, a man whose mind was actually gone, would keep plowing. He wouldn't recognize his own child. He'd drive the blade straight through. You stop, of course you stop. It's your son. Your body reacts before your brilliant scheming brain can catch up, and you yank the plow aside to avoid the baby, and in that one instant of tenderness, the whole performance shatters. Palamedes has his proof. No madman swerves to save his child. You knew exactly what you were doing. You're saying, you're caught. That's the trouble with being the smartest man in Greece. You're never the only one, and you'll remember Palamedes. Oh, you'll remember him. Filing that name away for later is the most Odysseus thing you will ever do. And Palamedes will find out years from now exactly what it costs to outsmart a man who never forgets a debt. But that's a darker story for another night. For now, the trick is broken. The salt is scattered in the dirt. Your son is safe in your arms and your cover is blown, and there's nothing left to do but set down the plow, take off the farmer's cap, and become the thing you spent all that effort trying not to be, a soldier, bound for Troy, because of an oath you invented to keep everyone else out of exactly this situation. You look back at your hall one last time. Penelope in the doorway, not crying, because she doesn't cry easily, just watching you with that steady, patient look, memorizing your face. The baby, the goats on the hill, the good roof, the whole quiet, decent life you built on this rock. You tell her you'll be back soon. You have no idea. You've just told the biggest lie of your life. Soon is going to take 20 years. The sea between Ithaca and Troy is not a short trip, and it is not a comfortable one. You spend the crossing on a wooden ship that smells like tar, sweat, and the specific misery of men who did not want to be here. Because that's the secret nobody puts in the heroic songs. Half this army was dragged to war the same way you were. Oaths, obligations, kings who couldn't say no. You look around at the fleet gathering, 1,000 ships by some counts, and you realize you're not sailing to a grand noble crusade. You're sailing to the largest gathering of reluctant, homesick, heavily armed men the world has ever seen. It's less an army and more a floating argument that hasn't started yet. And leading this beautiful disaster is a man named Agamemnon. Agamemnon is the most powerful king in Greece, the brother of the husband Helen abandoned, and the closest thing this expedition has to a commander-in-chief. He is proud. He is stubborn. He is convinced that being the most powerful king automatically makes him the smartest, which is a mistake you personally would never make. Being both smart and painfully aware of how many powerful idiots you've met. You take one look at Agamemnon and understand your job for the next however many years. Your job is going to be managing this man's ego so it doesn't get everyone killed. Spoiler, you will fail at this repeatedly. The ego is that large. The fleet finally reaches Troy, and there it is, the great city, the reason for all of this. And your heart sinks a little, because Troy is not some sad little village you can knock over in a weekend. Troy is a fortress. Massive stone walls, thick and high, the kind of walls that make an attacking soldier stop and quietly reconsider his life choices. Behind those walls sits a wealthy, defended, well-supplied city that has absolutely no intention of handing Helen back, and even less intention of letting your enormous grumpy army inside. You stand on the beach, looking up at those walls, and you do the math again. You're always doing the math, This is going to take a while. You have no idea how right you are. The war for Troy is going to grind on for 10 years. 10 years of camping on a beach. 10 years of skirmishes and stalemates and men dying of disease as often as swords. 10 years of watching heroes strut around performing their glory while the actual city stays exactly as unconquered as it was on day one. If you'd known, standing on that sand, that you'd spend a full decade of your life staring at the same set of walls, you might have walked back into the surf and kept swimming, but you don't know. So you make camp, and you get to work, and this is where you become who the songs remember. Because in a war of muscle, you are the mind. While the strong men line up to trade blows in the field, you're the one thinking 3 moves ahead. When the army needs someone to sneak into the enemy's territory under cover of night and come back with information, they send you. When 2 Greek commanders are about to draw swords on each other over some insult, they send you to talk them down. When a plan needs to be clever instead of loud, when a message needs to be delivered by someone who won't get himself killed with his own mouth, when a problem needs a solution that isn't just hitting it harder, they send you. Always you become the man Greece reaches for. When strength has run out of ideas, it's exhausting, honestly. Everyone else gets to be famous for one thing. That man is the strongest. That man is the fastest runner. That man has the magic armor. And you? You're famous for being the one they wake up at midnight when everything has gone wrong and someone needs to think. The reward for being reliable is that people rely on you endlessly at the worst possible hours. Being clever in a world of heroes wasn't a throne. It was a job that never closed. Years pass this way. The war becomes less an event and more a lifestyle. You watch great men fall. You watch the mighty Achilles, the single deadliest fighter in the entire army, a man so dangerous that whole battles turned on his mood, sulk in his tent for weeks over a personal insult and nearly lose the war for everyone out of sheer wounded pride. You watch, and you learn the lesson you already half knew. Strength without sense is a weapon pointed at its own owner. The strongest man in the world is useless if he'd rather brood than fight. You would never brood. You don't have the luxury. There's always another problem waiting. And through all of it, one question keeps circling the camp like a gull that won't leave. 10 years in, Troy still stands. The walls have not fallen. Every direct assault has broken against that stone like water against a cliff. You cannot starve them out. The city has its own supplies and its own gates to the wider world. You cannot smash the walls down. You've tried, and the walls are winning. The greatest army ever assembled has spent a decade proving one thing conclusively: you cannot take Troy by force. The commanders are out of ideas. Agamemnon is out of patience. The men are out of hope, out of youth, out of the will to keep hurling themselves at the same unbreakable rocks. Some of them have been on this beach so long their sons back home are nearly grown. The whole enormous expedition is grinding slowly toward the most humiliating outcome imaginable: 1,000 ships and 10 years of death. And then everyone just goes home empty-handed, defeated by a wall. Unless someone thinks of something. And around the fire, in the tired silence, the eyes start to turn toward the one man who is famous for exactly that. You feel it before anyone says a word. The weight of it settling on you again, the way it always does. When force fails, they come looking for the mind. And there's only one mind in this camp that solves the problems no one else can crack. You stare into the flames. 10 years of walls that won't fall. 10 years of the front door being locked. And slowly, quietly, in the part of your brain that never stops turning things over, an idea begins to take shape. A terrible, beautiful, ridiculous idea. The kind of idea that only works if the enemy is proud enough to make one very human mistake. The kind of idea that could end this whole war, not by breaking the door down, but by getting Troy to open it for you. Open it for you. The idea is a horse. You know how that sounds. You knew how it sounded the first time you said it out loud, standing in the commander's tent while a dozen exhausted kings stared at you like you'd finally cracked after all. A horse. A giant wooden horse. That's the war-winning strategy. 10 years of the finest warriors in the world. And your grand solution is arts and crafts. But you keep talking, because you've already seen the whole thing in your head, start to finish, and you know it works. Here's the shape of it. The Greeks cannot break into Troy. Fine. So the Greeks stop trying to break in. Instead, they leave. They burn their camp, they board their ships, and they sail away over the horizon. The whole fleet gone. The beach suddenly empty after 10 long years. To the watchers on the walls of Troy, it looks like the impossible has finally happened. The Greeks have given up. The war is over. They've won. And on the empty beach, the Greeks leave behind one thing. A gift. The gift? An enormous horse, beautifully built out of timber, standing tall on the sand where the camp used to be. An offering to the gods, apparently. A monument to a war the Greeks have abandoned. A trophy for Troy to drag home in triumph. Except the horse is hollow. And inside it, packed into the dark wooden belly, sitting shoulder to shoulder in absolute silence, are you and the best fighters in the army. That's the whole trick. The Greeks don't break down the walls. The Trojans carry the Greeks through the gates themselves. You don't attack the fortress. You get the fortress to adopt you. The tent goes quiet when you finish. And then, slowly, the reluctant genius of it lands on every tired face in the room. It's insane. It depends entirely on the enemy being proud enough, relieved enough, desperate enough for this nightmare to be over that they'll want to believe they've won. It asks the Trojans to make one very human mistake, to open the gate for a prize instead of inspecting it for a threat. You're betting the entire war on the idea that people believe what they desperately want to be true. It is, you'll admit, a strange thing to build a plan on. But you've spent 10 years watching proud men make exactly that mistake over and over. You'd bet your life on it. Which is convenient, because you're about to so they build the horse. And when it's done, the fleet burns the camp and sails away. Not far, just out of sight, hidden behind a nearby island, waiting. And you and your hand-picked men climb up inside the belly of the thing through a hidden hatch. And they seal you in, and the ships pull back, and the beach falls silent. And then you wait, inside the horse. It is dark and hot and cramped, and it smells like fresh-cut wood, and the nervous sweat of men who all know that this is the single most exposed either genius or suicide moment of their lives. You can't see out. You can barely move. You can only listen. And the rule you drilled into every man before they climbed in, is absolute silence. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens outside, not a sound, because they're going to hear the Trojans finding the horse. And they're going to have to sit there, hidden, defenseless, and do nothing about it. Morning comes, and you hear them. You hear the gates of Troy groan open. You hear voices, Trojan voices, cautious at first, then louder, then a whole crowd, coming out onto the abandoned beach to marvel at it. The Greeks are gone. The Greeks are actually gone. 10 years and it's finally over, and they've won. You can hear the disbelief turning into joy, turning into celebration. And there, right in the middle of the empty beach, stands this magnificent wooden horse, a gift, a trophy. And you sit in the dark, holding your breath, listening to the enemy decide your fate a few feet from your face. It does not go smoothly, because not every Trojan is a fool. You hear one voice, a Trojan priest, deeply suspicious, warning the crowd not to trust it. Don't bring it inside, he says. It's the Greeks. It's always the Greeks. He doesn't know you're in there, but his instincts are perfect. And for one horrible moment his instincts might just save Troy and doom every man crammed into this wooden coffin. You hear him arguing. You hear him hurl something at the horse's flank in frustration. A spear, a stick, something, and the whole hollow shell shudders with the impact. And you and 40 armed men freeze in the dark, absolutely certain you've been discovered. If even one of you flinches, if even one man's nerve breaks and he cries out, it's over. Nobody moves. Nobody breathes, and the moment passes. The suspicious priest gets overruled, the way careful voices so often get overruled by a crowd that has already decided to be happy. The Trojans want the war to be over so badly that they simply choose not to listen to the one man telling them the truth. They decide the horse is a prize, and they decide the priest is a killjoy, and they wrap ropes around your wooden hiding place and begin to haul. You feel it lurch. You feel the horse tilt and roll, dragged forward across the sand, up toward the great gates. You feel the shadow of the walls pass over you as they pull the horse through the entrance of a city no Greek army could crack in 10 years of trying. And that's it. That's the whole war. right there, in the dark, in the smell of pine and fear. You didn't break Troy. Troy carried you inside and locked the gate behind you. Then you wait some more. Hardest part yet. Because now you're inside the city, but it's daytime, and the streets are full, and the celebration is only getting louder. So you wait for night. You wait through hours of Trojan feasting and singing and drinking, the sounds of a people throwing the greatest party of their lives to celebrate a victory that isn't real. You listen to the enemy get drunk on relief. You wait until the noise finally dies down, until the wine does its work, until the whole triumphant, exhausted city sinks into the deepest, happiest, most defenseless sleep it will ever sleep. And then, in the black quiet of the middle of the night, you give the signal. The hatch opens. One by one, silent as shadows, you and your men climb down out of the horse into the sleeping streets of Troy. And the first thing you do is go to the gates. The great gates that kept your army out for 10 years, and you open them. From the inside dot out beyond the walls, the fleet has already crept back to the beach under cover of dark. The whole army is waiting, and the moment those gates swing wide, 10 years of pent-up Greek war pours into a city that has no idea it's already lost. I'll be honest with you here, because this is the part the songs love to dwell on, and I won't. What happens next is not a clever trick or a heroic duel. It's the fall of a city, and the fall of a city is an ugly, terrible thing, the kind of night that later generations would tell as a warning about what happens when a people let their guard down at the worst possible moment. Troy, which stood proud and unbroken for a decade, is undone in a single dark night, not by strength, but by a story it wanted to believe. The gift was the weapon. The celebration was the wound. And by the time the sun comes up, the great city is finished, and the war that swallowed 10 years of your life is finally, brutally over. You won. You specifically. Your idea. Your horse. When the poets sing about the fall of Troy, they'll sing your name loudest of all, the man whose mind did what 1,000 ships and 10 years of muscle could not. This is the height of your fame, the greatest trick in the history of war, and it's yours. You should feel triumphant. Standing in the conquered city at dawn, the impossible finally accomplished. You should feel like a god. Mostly you feel tired. And you feel something colder underneath the tired, though you can't name it yet. Because here's the thing they don't warn you about winning. When you win by outsmarting everyone, when you win by being cleverer and trickier than any man alive, you make an impression. And not everyone who notices you is mortal. Up above, in places you can't see, older and vaster things have been watching this whole performance. Watching the little king from the rocky island out think an entire war. And gods, it turns out, have opinions about clever men who win too well. Especially clever men who forget in the glow of victory to be humble about it. You don't know it yet, standing there in the smoke and the gray morning light. But you've just done the single most impressive thing any human will do in your entire age, and the doing of it has quietly made you an enemy far larger than Troy ever was, for now, though all you can think about is the sea. The war is over. The oath is fulfilled. Helen will go home, and so will you. Somewhere over that water is a small stony island, and a wife with a steady, patient face, and a son who was a screaming newborn when you left and must be 10 years old by now. A boy who has never once seen his father's face. You board your ships. You point the prows west toward home. Ithaca, Penelope, Telemachus. After 10 years, you're finally going back. You think it'll take a few weeks. The sea has other plans. And so does someone much, much bigger than the sea. The first days at sea are good. That's the cruel part. The wind is fair. The water is kind. Your ships cut west across the wine-dark swells, with Troy shrinking behind you. And for a little while you let yourself believe it's going to be simple. You've earned simple. 10 years on a beach, and now just a straight run home to the rock and the goats and the woman who's been waiting. You stand at the prow and taste the salt spray and think about Penelope's face, and it's almost enough to make you forget the cold, nameless thing you felt in the ruins. Nameless thing you felt in the ruins. Almost, but the sea is a large place, and the fleet that sailed from Troy does not stay together for long. All around you, the other kings are scattering to their own kingdoms, each captain pointing his own way home across an ocean that suddenly feels much bigger than it did on the way out. Some of them will make it back quickly. Some of them are sailing toward homecoming so much worse than yours that if you knew the details, you'd count yourself lucky. Kings returning to thrones that have been stolen, to wives who've moved on, to knives waiting in the dark of their own halls. Winning the war, it turns out, was the easy part for everyone. Surviving the peace is where the real trouble lives. You don't know any of that yet. You just watch the sails of your friends drop over the horizon one by one, until it's only your own small squadron left, riding west into open water. And then the wind changes. You feel it before you see it, that shift in the air that every sailor's body learns to dread. The pressure dropping, the light going strange and yellow at the edges. The kind sea turns. The swells that were rolling gently under your hull start to stack up into something meaner. The wind that was pushing you home swings around and begins to shove, then to howl. Clouds pile up black on the horizon and come racing toward you faster than clouds should move. A storm. And not an ordinary one. You've sailed through weather before. Every man aboard has. But this is something else. This has teeth. This has intention. This feels less like bad luck and more like a door slamming. The sea heaves your ships up onto mountains of black water and drops them into troughs so deep the sky vanishes. Rain comes sideways. The wind rips at the sails until the men have to fight the canvas down before it tears the masts out. You grip the rail with both hands and shout orders you can barely hear yourself give, and the whole world becomes water and noise and the terrible groaning of wooden hulls trying not to come apart. For days it throws you. Days. You lose all sense of direction, all sense of where home even is. The stars are gone. The sun is gone. There's only the storm, driving you God knows where across an ocean that seems personally offended by your existence, and somewhere in the middle of it, soaked and sleepless and clinging to the deck, a thought surfaces in that restless mind of yours that never stops working. This isn't weather. You've been a clever man your whole life, a man who reads patterns, who notices when things don't add up. And this doesn't add up. Storms blow and pass. This one hunts. It found your ships specifically, out of all the fleet, and it will not let go. Something is behind this, something with a grudge and the power to reach across the whole sea to settle it. You think back to Troy, to the smoke and the gray dawn, to that cold feeling you couldn't name. Gods. It's the gods. You've done something, or your men have, or your very cleverness has some slight, some pride, some crossed line up in that vast unseeable world where the powers that shape the sea keep their own accounts. And now the bill has come due, and it's arrived in the form of black water and a wind that wants you dead. You don't know yet exactly whose grudge this is. You don't know the name of the enormous enemy you've made, or what your men are going to do in the coming days to make it 1,000 times worse, or how many years and how many lives it's going to cost before this is finished. You just know, gripping that rail with your knuckles white and the sea trying to swallow your ships whole, that the simple journey home you imagined is already gone. 10 years to win the war. That something tells you the trip home is going to take even longer. The storm finally spits. You out, battered. Scattered, your ships intact, but your bearings destroyed. Onto a stretch of open water you don't recognize. Under a sky you don't know, farther from Ithaca than when you started. The men are shaken. You're shaken, though you'd never let them see it. And as the waves settle from murderous to merely dangerous, you square your shoulders and do the only thing left to do. You find a heading. You gather your ships, and you sail on into unknown seas. A small, stubborn king who has just made an enemy far bigger than himself, and who is about to learn, one disaster at a time, exactly how patient a god's anger can be. Home is out there somewhere. Between you and it lies everything the sea has been saving up. The first place the sea throws you is a city called Ismarus, and you make a decision there that you'll be paying for the whole way home. You attack it. Now, in fairness to you, and you'll spend a lot of this journey being fair to yourself, because someone has to. This isn't random cruelty. Ismarus belongs to a people called the Chicons, who were allies of Troy. And the logic of the war you just finished. They're enemies, and their city is fat with plunder. And you've got a fleet of tired men who feel they've earned a reward after 10 years of misery. So you land, and you take the city, and your men fill the ships with treasure and wine and everything not nailed down. It goes beautifully, almost too beautifully, and this is the moment. Right here. This is where you tell your men to get back on the ships and leave, because you're the smart one. You're the one who always knows when to quit while ahead. You do tell them exactly that. They don't listen, because the wine is very good, and the beach is pleasant, and the men decide that instead of sailing away rich and alive, they'd rather stay on the shore and feast. They light fires. They slaughter the captured livestock. They drink the plundered wine until they can't stand, sprawled out on enemy sand, celebrating like the war is over and nothing in the world can touch them. And you stand there watching your crew ignore the one order that matters, and you feel the very specific despair of a clever man surrounded by people who will not be clever with him. Leading these men, you're beginning to realize, is going to be less like commanding an army and more like babysitting several hundred armed toddlers with a death wish. Because here's what the drunk men on the beach forgot. The Chicons you didn't kill ran inland, and inland they had neighbors, tougher neighbors. fighting men who come thundering back at dawn while your crew is still groaning and hung over in the sand. And this time it isn't a helpless city getting looted. This time it's a real battle against fresh, furious warriors, and your scattered, drunk, overconfident men are in no shape for it. You lose people. Real people, men who survived 10 years at Troy, only to die on a nothing beach because they wanted one more cup of wine. By the time you fight your way back to the ships and shove off, you've left 6 men dead from every single vessel in your fleet, gone. For a party, you stand at the stern watching the shore recede, counting the empty spaces at the oars, and the lesson lands on you like a stone. The war didn't kill these men. Their own appetite did. And you understand, in a way you'll understand more and more deeply as this journey grinds on, that the greatest danger you face out here isn't monsters or gods or storms, Dot. It's the men you're trying to bring home. The homecoming wasn't going to be defeated by the sea. It was going to be defeated over and over. By your own crew you sail on, lighter by too many oars, and the sea decides you haven't suffered enough yet. A storm takes you. One of those hunting storms again. The kind that feels aimed and drives you off every map you know. South and away days of being flung across water toward nowhere. And when the wind finally lets go and the sea flattens out, you find yourself drifting toward a strange coast, a green and quiet shore, unfamiliar and far too calm. After everything, Dot, you need water. You need food. You need to know where you are. So you send a small party of men ashore to scout, just a few, told to go find whoever lives here, ask some questions, and come straight back. They do not come straight back. You wait. An hour. More. And when they still don't return, that cold prickle of wrong crawls up your spine and you go looking for them yourself. And what you find is not a fight, not blood, not captured men in chains. What you find is your men sitting on the ground among the locals, perfectly happy, blissed out of their minds, chewing on some kind of flower. This is the land of the lotus eaters. The people here live on a plant, a fruit, a flower the stories aren't sure, and whoever eats it is overtaken by a deep, dreamy, golden contentment. Every worry dissolves. Every ambition melts. The past goes quiet, and the future stops mattering, and there is only this warm floating now, forever, with no reason to ever move again. The lotus eaters offered your scouts a taste, the way you'd offer a guest a meal, and your men took it. And now they don't want to leave. That's the horror of it. And it's a quieter horror than a monster. Your men aren't trapped. They're not drugged against their will. Exactly. They simply, genuinely no longer want to go home. You find them, and you say the words, Ithaca, the ships, your families, come on, we're leaving. And they look up at you with these peaceful, empty smiles, and they don't care. Home? Why would they want home? Home is effort. Home is grief and distance, and a hard journey across a killing sea. Here there's the flower. Here there's nothing but soft, endless calm. You've faced enemies who wanted to kill your men. This is worse. This is a place that wants to keep them by making them content. And a man who's content has no reason to fight for his own freedom. That's the trap. It doesn't hurt. It just makes you forget you ever wanted anything at all. You look at their faces and you feel a chill that no battle ever gave you. because you understand exactly how this ends if you let it. They'll sit here and smile until they die, and they'll die happy. And that somehow makes it more terrible. Not less, so you don't ask them again. You drag them, you physically haul your own men off that shore, grown warriors, weeping and pleading to be left with their flower, and you bind them down under the rowing benches of the ship where they can't get loose. You have to. Reason won't work on them. The only way to save them is to take away their choice and carry them out by force, kicking and grieving, back toward a home they no longer remember wanting. And then you order every other man to the oars. Now hard, before the golden calm can reach any of them too. You row for the open sea like you're fleeing a fire, because in a way you are a fire that burns cold and feels like peace and eats the will right out of a person. You get them out, barely, and as the dreamy green shore falls away behind you and your bound men slowly, painfully come back to themselves under the benches, you allow yourself one grim thought. Not every trap has teeth. Some traps just have comfort. And comfort, you're learning, can steal a man more completely than any sword. You sail on, your crew intact for now, your course still lost, the sea still huge and hostile around you. You have no idea that the worst thing you'll face on this entire journey is waiting just ahead, on an island that looks empty, in a cave that looks safe, belonging to a creature whose father happens to rule the very ocean you're trying to cross. You're about to make the mistake that curses everything. The island looks like a gift after the flower shore and the storms. You come upon a green place with wild goats roaming the hills, fresh water, shade, everything a starving crew could want. You land, you eat, you rest, and across a narrow stretch of water sits a second, larger island, and on its shore you can see caves and pens and the signs of someone living there, someone with flocks, someone with food. Your curiosity, that same restless hunger to know things, to see what's over the next hill, pulls at you. You could just take the goats and leave. That's what a careful man would do. That's what you tell yourself a careful man would do, even as you're picking 12 of your best men to come with you and rowing straight toward those caves. You bring a skin of wine, strong wine, a dark, powerful vintage. You don't know why you grab it exactly. Call it instinct. Call it the part of your mind that's always packing a tool it might need later. That wine is going to save every life. You have left. You find the cave, enormous, high-roofed, full of penned lambs and racks of cheese and pails of milk, the home of a shepherd who is clearly wealthy and clearly away with his flocks. Your men want to grab what you can carry and run. Smart, correct, and you overrule them because you want to meet whoever lives here, you want to see him, you want to know. So you settle in to wait for the owner to come home, helping yourselves to his food. While you do, the owner comes home, and the owner is not a man. He fills the entire mouth of the cave. When he ducks through it, a giant, taller than any mortal, broad as a tree, driving his flocks ahead of him. And in the center of his forehead, where 2 eyes should be, there is one. A single great eye, watching. This is Polyphemus, a cyclops, one of a race of one-eyed giants, who herd their sheep on these islands and answer to no one. He's the son of a god, though you don't know that yet. He is huge, and he is strong beyond anything you've faced, and you and your 12 men are standing uninvited in his living room eating his cheese. Then he does something that turns your blood to ice. He rolls a stone across the cave mouth to close it for the night. A stone so vast that 20 ordinary men couldn't shift it. You're sealed in. There's no fighting your way past it, no slipping out. You wanted to meet him, and now you're locked in a cave with him, and the door is a boulder only he can move. He notices you. He asks who you are. And when he finds strangers in his home, he doesn't offer the hospitality that every civilized people in your world holds sacred. He reaches down, snatches up 2 of your men, and eats them in front of you. Just like that, you've seen war. You've seen a city fall. You have never in your life been this afraid, because this is a kind of helplessness you've never known. Trapped, outmatched, watching a monster casually devour your crew while you stand there unable to stop him. And here's where you have to be the smartest man in Greece, or you're all going to die in this cave. Your first instinct is to draw your sword and kill him in his sleep. And you nearly do until you look at that impossible stone across the door and realize the trap in your own plan. If you kill him, you die too, because the only thing strong enough to move that boulder is the giant himself. Kill Polyphemus, and you've simply chosen the slower death, sealed in a tomb behind a rock you can't budge, waiting to starve beside his corpse. You can't kill him. You need him alive to open the door. But alive, he'll eat you all, 2 at a time, until there's no one left. This is the problem your whole life has been training you for. You need him to open the door and not be able to stop you. You need him incapacitated but breathing. You need to disarm the strongest thing you've ever met without killing it. So you think. And the plan comes together in pieces, cold and clear. First, the wine. When the giant has eaten his fill of your friends, you step forward and offer him the dark, strong wine you brought. He's never tasted anything like it. The Cyclopes drink milk, not fine wine, and he loves it. And he demands more, and you keep pouring, cup after enormous cup, feeding his greed until the drink does what you knew it would, and his one eye starts to sag, and drunk and pleased, he asks you your name. He promises you a gift for the wine. This is the second piece, and it's the one people remember forever. You look up at this giant and you tell him your name is Nobody. That's it, Nobody. He laughs at it, some drunk grumbling laugh, and he gives you your gift. His gift is that he'll eat you last. How generous. And then the wine finishes its work, and Polyphemus topples over into a dead, drunken sleep on the floor of the cave. Now, you've already prepared the third piece. While he was out with his flocks, you and your men took a great olive wood staff of his, and you sharpened one end to a wicked point, and you hardened it in the fire. And now, with the giant sprawled unconscious, you and 4 of your strongest men lift that massive stake, and you heat the point until it glows, and you drive it with everything you have into his single sleeping eye. I'll spare you the worst of it. But the giant wakes screaming, blinded in agony, flailging in the dark for the tiny enemies who did this to him. And he can't find you, because now he can't see. You've taken his one great advantage. The strongest creature you've ever faced is suddenly stumbling helpless around his own cave, and you and your men press flat against the walls. Out of the reach of his grasping hands, he roars in pain, and other Cyclopes on the island hear him and come to the cave, calling through the sealed door. What's wrong? Who's hurting you? Is someone attacking you? And Polyphemus screams back the answer. Nobody. Nobody is killing me. And his neighbors, hearing that nobody is hurting him, decide he must be sick or mad or cursed by the gods, and there's nothing they can do about that, and they wander back to their own caves and leave him to it. Your name saved you. He can't even call for help without telling them the truth is that nobody did this. The whole thing turns on a pun you set up an hour before you needed it, and that, right there, is the most you thing you will ever do. Asterisk, but you're still sealed in. Blinding him didn't open the door, so here's the last piece. In the morning, the giant has to let his flocks out to graze. He can't see, but the sheep still need feeding. He rolls the great stone back just enough to let them pass, and he sits in the doorway with his hands spread, feeling the back of every single sheep as it goes out, making absolutely sure no Greek is riding on top of one to escape. He's clever too, in his way. He guards the tops of the sheep. He doesn't think to check underneath, because you've tied your men beneath the bellies of his largest rams, clinging to the thick wool hidden under the animals. And one by one the sheep amble out to pasture, and the blind giant runs his hands over each woolly back and feels nothing wrong, and carries your entire crew to freedom without ever knowing it. You go last, clinging under his favorite ram, and even then he pauses over that one, talking to it, wondering why his best ram is moving so slowly this morning, and you hang there in the wool with your heart hammering, inches from his hands, and you say nothing, and the ram carries you out into the daylight. You made it. All the men still alive out of the cave, back to the ships, shoving off from that terrible shore. You did the impossible again. You walked into a sealed cave with the god's son, and you walked out, and you should have just left. You know you should have just left, but you're pulling away from the island, safe, triumphant, and the old hunger rises up in you, the need to win the moment completely, the need to make sure your enemy knows exactly who beat him. And you can't help yourself. You stand up in the stern of your ship, and you cup your hands, and you shout back across the water at the blinded giant on the shore. You tell him your name, your real name, not nobody. You tell him it was Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who took his eye. You give him your name, your title, your home, everything he needs to curse you properly, because you couldn't stand to win in silence. It is the single worst decision of your entire life. Because Polyphemus lifts his blind face to the sky and calls out to his father, and his father is Poseidon, god of the sea, the god who rules every mile of water between you and Ithaca. And the giant prays to his father for vengeance, that Odysseus of Ithaca never reach his home, or if he must, that he reach it late and broken and alone, having lost everything and everyone, arriving a stranger in a house full of trouble. Poseidon hears his son, and out at sea, gripping the stern of your ship, you feel the water go cold and strange beneath you, and you understand, too late, always too late, what you've done. You had escaped clean. You were free, and you handed the god of the ocean your name and your address. Also a blind giant on a shrinking shore would know he'd been beaten by someone important. Every storm from here on has your name on it now. Every wave between you and home answers to the father of the creature you blinded. The journey that might have taken weeks is about to take 10 years. And this shout, this moment of pride you couldn't swallow, is the reason the smartest man in Greece just talked himself into a decade of exile with his own mouth. You're not done making it worse, either. Because the sea for a moment goes quiet again, Poseidon plays a long game, and you come to another island, a floating one, ringed with a wall of bronze. This is the home of Aeolus, the god who keeps the winds. And Aeolus, unlike everyone else you've met out here, is kind to you. He hosts you for a month. He feeds you. He listens to your stories of Troy. He treats you like an honored guest. And when you leave, he gives you a parting gift that is worth more than any treasure. He takes all the storm winds, every gale and gust that could blow you off course, and he binds them up tight inside a great leather bag. And he ties the bag shut with a bright silver cord, and he stows it aboard your ship. He leaves out only the one gentle west wind you need, that single soft wind to carry you straight home. All the dangerous winds locked away in a sack, harmless, so that nothing can push you off your course to Ithaca. He has handed you a safe passage home. All you have to do is not open the bag, and for 9 days it works perfectly. The gentle west wind fills your sail and pushes you east day and night, and you are so close that on the 10th day you can actually see Ithaca, your island, home, on the horizon at last. You can make out the fires of the people on the shore. You've been awake the entire 9 days, steering, refusing to trust anyone else with the tiller, refusing to let go of it even for a moment because you're so close. And now, with home in sight, exhausted beyond anything, you finally let your eyes close. Just for a little while, just enough sleep to get you to the beach, and your crew looks at that mysterious bag, the one the wind god gave the captain, the one he's guarded so carefully the whole way, wouldn't let anyone near, tied up with silver cord. And they whisper to each other the thought that destroys everything. It must be treasure. Gold and silver from Troy that Odysseus is keeping for himself. Look at him hoard it. We did all the rowing, we suffered too, and he's going to carry a fortune home and give us nothing. Let's just take a look. Let's just open it and see our share while he sleeps. They untie the silver cord, and every storm wind, Aeolus, locked away, comes screaming out of the bag at once. You wake to chaos, to a hurricane bursting up out of your own ship. The winds tear the sea into mountains and grab your fleet and hurl it backward, away from Ithaca, away from the shore you could see, back across all the water you'd crossed. Days and days of progress ripped away in an instant. You're driven all the way back to where you started, back to the floating island of Aeolus, the winds spent and scattered. Your home once again, 1,000 miles of ocean behind you. You go back to Aeolus. You beg him to help you again, to bag the winds a second time. He refuses, and this time he's afraid of you, because a man who was given a perfect gift by the gods and lost it, a man this cursed, this hounded, this clearly hated by some power greater than Aeolus wants to cross, is a man the wind god wants nothing more to do with. Leave, he tells you. Whatever god is against you, I can't stand between you and them. Get off my island, and you sail away defeated, undone once again, not by a monster this time, but by your own crew's greed, and one bag left unguarded for a single hour of sleep. You had it. Home was on the horizon. You could see the smoke of your own hearth, Dot, and now it's gone, and the sea is against you, and the men you're trying to save keep finding new ways to doom you all. The journey is only getting started, and the worst monsters are still ahead. The next harbor looks perfect, and that should have been the warning. You come to a land of tall cliffs and a narrow entrance to a still, sheltered bay, the kind of harbor a tired sailor dreams about. Walls of rock closing around calm water, safe from any storm. Your whole fleet is with you still, all the ships that survived, and one by one your captains steer them in through the narrow mouth and moor them close together in that quiet, protected water. It feels like shelter. It feels like the first lucky break in a long time. You, though, you hang back, Dot, something in you, that same wary instinct that packed the wine before the Cyclops, keeps your own ship near the harbor mouth, tied to a rock at the very edge, while every other vessel crowds deep into the sheltered bay. You can't say why. You just don't like how perfect it is. So you wait, and you send a few men up over the cliffs to scout the land. To find whoever lives here, Dot, they find the people who live here, Dot. This is the country of the Lestrygonians, and the Lestrygonians are giants. Not one giant in a cave this time. A whole nation of them. A city of them. Cannibal giants the size of Polyphemus, and far too many to count. Your scouts realize what they're looking at and try to run, but it's already too late. The giants have seen your ships, and they come down to that beautiful sheltered harbor, the one with the narrow mouth, the one your whole fleet sailed so trustingly into, and they stand on the high cliffs above the trap ships, and they begin to throw boulders, and there is nothing you can do. That's the horror of this one, and it's a different flavor than the Cyclops. Against the giant in the cave you had a chance, a plan, a way to be clever. Here, cleverness is useless. Your ships are packed into a stone bowl with one narrow exit, and the giants stand on the rim above them, raining down rocks that shatter hulls and crush men, and the crews can't row out fast enough, can't fight back, can't do anything but die in that pretty little harbor that closed around them like a mouth. The giants spear the men struggling in the water like fish and carry them off to eat. Ship after ship after ship splintered and sunk, your whole fleet destroyed in a matter of minutes, except yours, because you hung back, because you moored at the very lip of the harbor instead of trusting the shelter. You draw your sword and cut your own mooring line with one stroke, and scream at your men to row, row for your lives. Row for open water, and your single ship claws its way out through the narrow mouth, while the boulders fall behind you. Out into the safe empty sea, alone, Dot, you get away. One ship, and you stand at the stern and watch the harbor recede. And you count what's left, Dot, everything is gone. Not 6 men, from every ship this time. Every ship, all of them but one. The whole fleet that sailed with you from Troy, dozens of vessels, hundreds and hundreds of men, all the friends and captains and crews you brought this far, gone in a single afternoon, smashed and drowned and devoured in a harbor that looked like safety. You have one ship left now, one, and the men aboard it are all the men you have left in the world. Dot, the instinct that made you hang back at the harbor mouth saved these few. It couldn't save the rest. You sail on across an empty sea with your one surviving ship, and the grief sits on the whole crew like a wet cloak. There's no cleverness that fixes this. There's no plan that brings back a drowned fleet. Sometimes the sea just takes, and all your genius can do is keep the last ship pointed forward. The forward heading brings you to another island. Green, wooded, quiet, smoke rising from somewhere deep in the trees. Someone lives here too. And after the giants, you're in no hurry to find out who. You beach the ship. You rest. You mourn. And when you've gathered enough courage, you split your remaining men into two groups. One to stay with you and the ship, one to go inland and scout the smoke, and you draw lots to decide who goes. The lot falls to the other group. 22 men march off into the woods to find whoever's cooking that fire. They come to a house of smooth stone in a clearing, and around it, this is the strange part, wolves and lions roam, but gentle, tame, fawning like house dogs, rubbing against the men instead of attacking. Inside the house, a woman sings at a great loom, weaving, her voice drifting out through the trees, beautiful beyond describing. She comes to the door. She's radiant, welcoming, warm. She invites the men in for food and drink, and after everything they've been through, the harbor, the giants, the loss, they follow her inside gratefully. All but one. One man, more cautious, hangs back at the edge of the clearing and watches. This is Circe, and Circe is a witch. She sits your men down and feeds them a fine meal, and into the food she stirs a potion. And the moment they've eaten, she strikes them with her wand, and your men change. Their faces lengthen into snouts. Their skin roughens into bristled hide. They drop to all fours, grunting and squealing, and where 21 men sat at her table, there are now 21 pigs herded out into a sty in her yard. And the cruelest part, the part that would break you if you saw it, inside those pig bodies, their human minds are still there. They know what's happened. They remember being men. They weep in the only voice they have left, which is a squeal penned in the mud. Trapped Dot, the one cautious man who hung back, sees enough to understand something terrible has happened. And he runs, all the way back to the ship, white and shaking, to tell you your men walked into that house and never walked out, and you do the only thing you were ever going to do. You take up your sword and your bow, and you go after them. Alone, toward the house of a witch who turns men into animals, because they're your men and there's no one else to go. You don't yet know how you'll beat magic. Your whole life you've beaten problems with your mind, but you can't out-argue a spell, can't outthink a potion that's already changed a man's body. For the first time, cleverness alone may not be enough. This isn't a locked cave or a proud enemy. This is power of a kind you don't understand, and you're walking straight into it with a sword that can't cut a curse. Something is about to help you, something you don't expect, because a god has been watching this particular disaster, and for once, a god is on your side. And what happens in that witch's house is going to change the whole shape of your journey, and cost you something you're not even thinking about yet. A year. It's going to cost you a year. You climb up through the woods toward the smoke, sword drawn, every sense straining, and the forest is too quiet. No bird song, only the hush of leaves and your own breath. And on the path a young man steps out to meet you, slender, quick-eyed, with a strange fleeting quality, like someone who was never quite standing where you thought. This is the messenger God in disguise, sent down to help you, though you only half realize it in the moment. He stops you before you reach the house, and he tells you the truth of what you're walking into. He tells you about the potion, the wand, the pigs. He tells you that if you go in unprepared, you'll be squealing in the sty beside your men within the hour, and then he gives you a way through. He shows you a plant, a small flower with a black root and a milk-white bloom, hard for a mortal even to pull from the earth. And he tells you that this herb will make Circe's potion powerless against you. Eat it, and her magic slides off you like water. He tells you exactly how it will go. She feed you. She strike you with the wand. And when the spell fails and you don't change, she'll be so astonished that she'll know you're no ordinary man. And in that moment you draw your sword, as if to kill her, and she'll break and swear you an oath, and everything turns. Then the god is gone, the way those meetings always end, and you're alone on the path holding a flower that can beat a witch. Wondering how your life became this, you tuck the herb away and keep climbing. You are a mortal man armed with a plant and a plan, walking into the house of a power far older than you. And for once your survival depends not on your own genius, but on a gift you didn't earn and a god's momentary kindness. It's a humbling thing for a man who spent his whole life being the cleverest in every room. Out here, cleverness gets you to the door. It takes something more than cleverness to get you through it. You reach the clearing. The tame wolves and lions look up at you and don't attack. The loon song drifts out through the open door, that impossible voice, and you square your shoulders, and you step across the threshold into the house of Circe, sword hidden, the god's flower doing its quiet work in your blood. Whatever happens in the next hour decides whether your last men stay pigs forever, and whether you ever leave this island at all. You go in. All. You go in. It happens exactly the way the god said it would. Circe welcomes you, sits you down, brings you the fine meal with the potion stirred in, smiling all the while. You eat it, and she rises, and she touches you with her wand, and she speaks the words that should send you grunting out to the sty. Go, join your friends in the pen, and nothing happens. You just look at her, still a man, still yourself, and you watch the astonishment break across her face, because this has never once failed her. No mortal has ever eaten that potion and stayed standing, and in that instant of her shock, you draw your sword and rush at her as though to run her through. And Circe, powerful as she is, does exactly what the god promised. She crumples. She throws herself down and swears a great oath to do you no more harm, because she understands now that you're no ordinary wanderer, that a god must be guiding you, that you're the man foretold, and that her magic has finally met something it can't touch. You make her swear it properly. This cunning witch, because you don't trust an oath given under a sword. And once she's bound by it, you tell her the price of peace between you. Change my men back, now, and she does. She goes out to the sty and anoints each pig with a different drug, and the bristles fall away and the snouts soften back into faces, and your men stand up as men again, and more than that, the stories say they come back younger, taller, handsomer than before, weeping with relief, and Circe weeps too. and even her house seems to grieve and rejoice at once. You have them back, all of them. The magic that took them has given them back whole. And here, this is where the year disappears, because Circe, disarmed and sworn, doesn't send you away. She invites you to stay. And her house, after everything, after the storms and the giants and the drowned fleet and the grief, her house is warm. There's food that doesn't run out. There's rest. There's safety, real safety, the first you've known since Troy. There's Circe herself, and you and she became close in the way that a long stay makes people close. Your men eat and heal and grow strong again, and the days become weeks, and the weeks become months, and the terrible urgency that drove you across all that killing sea just quiets down. A full year passes on Circe's island, and you let it. That's the honest part. You who wept for home, who dragged your men off the flower shore by force so they wouldn't forget Ithaca, you settle into Circe's comfort, and you stop counting the days. It's not a spell this time. There's no potion holding you. You simply stay because it's soft and safe and you're so tired, and home is so far, and the sea out there still wants you dead. The Lotus Eaters trapped your men with contentment. Circe's island traps you with the same thing, and you don't even fight it. You just rest for a year, while Penelope waits on her rock and your son grows another year older. Without you, it takes your own men to wake you. Eventually they come to you, respectfully but firmly, and they say the thing you needed someone to say. Remember Ithaca. Remember home. It's time. And you come back to yourself, ashamed a little, and you go to Circe and tell her you have to leave. She doesn't stop you. She swore an oath, but she tells you something that turns your stomach cold. She tells you that before you can go home, you have to make another journey first, a worse one. You have to sail to the very edge of the world, to the entrance of the land of the dead, and there you have to summon and speak with the ghost of a blind prophet named Tiresias. Only he can tell you the way home. Only he knows the road. You have to go to the underworld, alive, and come back. No living man wants to hear that. But there's no path home that doesn't run through it. So you gather your men, grieving all over again, some of them, at the horror of where you're bound, and you sail to the dark edge of the ocean, to a shadowed shore where the sun never shines, and you perform the rites Circe taught you to call the dead up out of the earth, and they come, the spirits, drifting up out of the dark, pale and thin and reaching, the shades of everyone who has died crowding toward you. It's overwhelming and it's terrible, all these ghosts. And among them, this is the part that will haunt you. You see people you knew. You see the shade of your own mother, who was alive when you left for Troy, and is dead now, and this is how you learn it, meeting her ghost at the edge of the world. She died, the stories say, of grief and longing for you. You reach to embrace her, and your arms close on nothing, again and again, because she's only a shadow now, and you can't hold a shadow. You'll carry that for the rest of your life, that the price of your long absence was written on the people who loved you, and you didn't even know until you met them among the dead, but you're there for the prophet, and the prophet comes. Blind Tiresias, the seer whose wisdom outlasted his death. And he tells you the truth of your road home. He tells you Poseidon's anger is the thing dogging you, the price of the giant's eye, and that the god will make your homecoming hard and bitter, but that you can still reach Ithaca if you master one thing, self-control. He warns you of an island ahead where the cattle of the sun god graze, sacred cattle, and he tells you plainly, whatever happens, however hungry you are, do not touch them. Leave the cattle alone, and you may all get home. Harm them and you'll lose everything, your ship, your men, all of it, and reach home late and broken and alone exactly as the Cyclops cursed you. He tells you home is still possible, but only if you and your men can do the one thing your crew has never once managed to do. Restrain themselves. You already know how that's likely to go. You've watched these men open a bag of winds inside of home, and now the whole ending hinges on them walking past a field of the finest cattle in the world, starving and not touching a single one. You come back up out of the land of the dead, carrying that warning like a stone in your chest, and you sail back to Circe's island one last time. And Circe, before she sends you off for good, tells you what's waiting on the road ahead, the specific dangers one after another, and how to survive each one. She's your enemy no longer. She's your guide now, arming you with knowledge for the gauntlet to come. The first thing she says is the sirens. The sirens are creatures who sit on a flowering island by the sea and sing, and their song is the most beautiful sound in all the world. So beautiful that every sailor who hears it turns his ship toward them, helpless, drawn in, and wrecks on the rocks of their shore. And the meadow around them, Circe tells you, is heaped white with the bones of all the men who couldn't resist. The song promises to tell you everything, all the secrets and knowledge you've ever hungered for. And for a man like you, a man who has always needed to know, that's the deadliest bait imaginable. Whoever hears the sirens dies. That's the rule. But you want to hear them. Of course you do. It's the most you thing in the world. The one man who can't bear to sail past the most beautiful song ever sung without knowing what it sounds like. So Circe tells you the trick, and you use it. As you approach the island, you take beeswax and soften it, and stop up the ears of every man aboard, so that none of them can hear the song at all. They'll row past in silence, deaf to it, safe. But you leave your own ears open, because you want to hear it, and so that hearing it doesn't kill you, you order your men to tie you to the mast, bind you hand and foot to the timber, tight, and you give them one command they must obey no matter what. However much I beg, however I plead and struggle to be released, do not untie me. Row on. Tie the knots tighter if I fight them. Do not let me go until we're past, and it happens just as feared. The song comes across the water, and it is everything, beautiful beyond bearing, promising you all the knowledge in the world, and singing your own name, and you lose your mind for it. You strain against the ropes. You scream at your men to free you, to turn the ship, to let you go to that island. You, the clever one, reduced to a thrashing, desperate creature by a song. But your men can't hear you. Their ears are stopped with wax. They see you struggling, and they only bind you tighter, exactly as you ordered, and they row, and the island falls behind and the song fades, and slowly your mind comes back to you. You heard the sirens. You lived, the only man ever to hear that song and survive it, and you did it by knowing in advance that you couldn't trust yourself, and building the cage before you needed it. There's a strange wisdom in that. Sometimes being clever means admitting the one person you can't outsmart is you. But the sirens were the easy danger. Because next, Circe warned you, the passage narrows, and you have to sail through a strait with a monster on each side. With a monster on each side. On one side is Scylla, a horror rooted in the cliff, with 6 long necks and 6 heads, each mouth full of teeth, that darts down and snatches sailors off the decks of passing ships, 6 men at a time, and there is no fighting her. On the other side, close enough to touch, is Charybdis, a vast whirlpool, a monster that swallows the whole sea down 3 times a day and belches it back up, and any ship caught in it is lost entirely, all hands, gone. And here is the cruelty of the choice, the one Circe made you understand before you came. You cannot avoid both. The strait is too narrow. Steer away from Scylla, and you fall into Charybdis and lose everyone. There's no clever third option this time, no herb, no trick, no bag of wind. Charybdis takes the whole ship, or Scylla takes 6 men. That's the entire menu. And so Circe told you the terrible answer plainly. Steer toward Scylla. Sail close to the monster with the 6 heads, because it is better to lose 6 men than to lose them all. You have to knowingly steer your last. Crew past a monster you know will eat 6 of them, and say nothing, and let it happen, because the other choice is worse. You don't even tell them. You can't. If they knew, they'd panic and freeze at the oars and doom everyone. So you carry that knowledge alone, the weight of it, and you steer the ship toward Scylla's cliff, and you watch the water, and you wait for the thing you know is coming, and it comes. As you pass beneath the cliff, the 6 heads strike down out of the rock, and 6 of your men are snatched, screaming off the deck, lifted into the air, calling your name, reaching for you, carried up to the monster's lair while you stand there and do nothing, because there is nothing to do. Circe warned you not even to try to fight, because trying would only cost you 6 more. So you sail on, and you leave them, and their cries follow you through the strait, until they don't dot. It's the most terrible thing you've ever watched. And you chose it, and it was the right choice. And both of those things are true at once. 6 men to save the rest. You knew before you entered the strait exactly how many the passage would cost, and you paid it. And you'll never stop hearing them. You come out the other side with your ship and the last of your men, fewer by 6, quieter further from the men you were when you left Troy dot and ahead of you now. Green on the horizon is an island, and on that island, grazing peaceful in the sun, is a herd of cattle, the sacred cattle, the one thing the blind prophet told you, on pain of losing everything, you must not touch. You've been warned twice now, by the ghost in the underworld and by the witch on the island. Leave the cattle alone, and you go home dot, and behind you, starving at the oars, are the same men who opened the bag of winds in sight of Ithaca. You already know how this ends. You just have to sail toward it and watch it happen. You beg them not to land. That's the thing you have to hold on to, in everything that comes after. When the island of the sun god rose green out of the water, you already knew what it was, and you told your men the truth, that a blind prophet in the land of the dead and a witch on her island had both warned you, in the same words that this place would destroy you if you touched what grazed here. You told them to row past, to keep going, to not even set foot on that shore, and they refused. They were exhausted. They'd buried the memory of 6 men taken by Scylla only days before. They were hungry and grieving, and at the very end of what a body can take, and the island had fresh water and a beach to sleep on, and they would not be talked back onto the sea. Their spokesman stood up to you respectfully but immovably, and said what tired men always say, "One night. Just let us rest one night on solid ground, and we'll sail at dawn, and we won't touch a thing. We swear it, Dot, so you made them swear it. Every man. A solemn oath that they would not lay a hand on a single one of the sun god's cattle, that they'd eat only the food you still carried from Circe, that they'd rest the night and leave at first light. And on that oath, you let them land. You should have known. Oaths from starving men are written on water, Dot, and then the sea itself trapped you there. Because in the night a storm rose, and in the morning the wind was dead against you, a gale howling straight out of the direction you needed to go. Day after day, penning your one ship in that harbor with no way to leave. You couldn't sail into that wind. No one could. So one day became 2, became many, and the food from Circe ran out. And there you were, a crew of starving men, marooned on an island, surrounded by the fattest, finest cattle in the world, forbidden to touch a single one, with the wind refusing to let them leave. You did everything a man could do. You rationed what was left. You sent men to fish and to hunt birds, anything, scraping together enough to keep everyone alive a little longer. And you prayed. You climbed away from the beach to a sheltered place and prayed to the gods to send a wind, to release you before hunger did what hunger does. And the gods, in their kindness, answered your prayer by putting you to sleep. That was their answer. Sleep. While you were gone. Because the moment you were away, one of your men said the thing you'd been dreading the whole time. He gathered the others, and he made the argument that hunger always makes. All deaths are terrible, he said, but starving to death is the worst of them. Better to take the risk, better to eat, and offer the best of the cattle to the gods. And if the gods want to punish us for it, well, drowning is quick, and this slow wasting is not. Let's take the cattle. Let's eat. Whatever comes, comes, and starving, desperate out of their captain's sight, they did it. They rounded up the best of the sun god's sacred cattle, and they slaughtered them, and they built their fires, and they roasted the meat. You woke to the smell of it, drifting up from the beach on the wind, roasting meat, the one smell that meant the end of everything. And you knew, before you even got there, exactly what your men had done, and exactly what it was going to cost. You ran down to the shore, but it was already finished. The cattle were already dead. The one line the prophet and the witch both told you never to cross. Your men had crossed while you slept, because they were starving and afraid, and you weren't there to stop them, and the omens that followed were like something out of a nightmare. The stories say the flayed hides of the cattle crawled along the ground, and the meat on the spits lowed like living animals, moaning as it cooked. The sun god knew. Of course he knew. He sees everything. That's what the sun does. And he went to Zeus, the king of the gods, in a fury, and he demanded justice. Punish these men who slaughtered my sacred cattle, he said, or I'll take my light down to shine among the dead instead of the living. And Zeus, to keep the sun in the sky, agreed. There was nothing you could do now but wait for the bill. For 6 days your men feasted on meat that should have killed them where they stood, and you watched, sick with knowing. And on the seventh day, the wind that had trapped you finally died down, and that was the trap closing, not opening. The calm was the bait, because the moment the sea looked safe, your men dragged the ship down the sand and boarded and rowed out onto the open water, glad to be leaving at last, not understanding that leaving was the whole point of the punishment. Out at sea, with no land in sight, was exactly where the gods wanted them. You got clear of the island, and then Zeus sent the storm. It came down out of a clear sky. Black clouds rolling over the ship in an instant, the sea heaving up, and then a single bolt of lightning straight down out of the heavens into the heart of your one remaining ship. The bolt shattered it. The mast snapped and fell, the timbers blew apart, and the whole vessel came to pieces in an instant, spilling every man into the raging sea, and every one of them drowned. All of them. The last of the crew, the men who ate the cattle, the men who opened the bag of winds, the men who'd been with you through the Cyclops and Circe and the land of the dead. The sea took every single one, tumbling in the water around the wreckage, gone. The curse the giant called down on you was coming true, line by line. You would reach home late. You would reach home broken. And you would reach home alone. Only you survived, because you hadn't eaten the cattle. You'd begged them not to. You'd sworn none of it. And so when the punishment fell, it fell on them and passed over you. But surviving it was its own kind of ordeal. You clung to a piece of the shattered ship, lashed a fragment of the mast and the keel together with a strap, and held on, and the sea carried you off alone. No crew, no vessel, one man on a broken timber in the middle of the ocean. And then the current dragged you back toward the strait, back toward Charybdis, the whirlpool that swallows the whole sea. You floated straight toward it, helpless, and just as your fragment of ship reached the monster's mouth, Charybdis sucked the water down and took your raft with it, down into the depths. But you saved yourself with one desperate act. As the timber went under, you leapt and caught hold of a fig tree growing out of the cliff above the whirlpool, and you clung there, dangling over the throat of the monster, hanging on by your arms while it swallowed your raft far below. You held on. For hours you held on, waiting, until Charybdis finally belched the sea back up, and your timber came, shooting up out of the depths again, and you dropped back down onto it and paddled with your hands for your life, out of reach of the monster, out into open water once more. The stories almost make a grim joke of it. The great Odysseus, hero of Troy, reduced to hanging from a fig tree like laundry over a drain, waiting for a whirlpool to give his raft back. There's no dignity left out here, just survival, hour by hour, one handhold at a time, and that's how it ends. The ships, the fleet, the crew, all of it. You left Troy with a fleet and hundreds of men. Now there is one broken timber and one exhausted king drifting alone across an empty sea. Everything and everyone he started with gone beneath the water. This is the low point of the whole long journey. This is the curse fully come true. Late, broken, alone, you drift for days on that fragment of wood. No land, no hope, just the sea and the sky and the terrible quiet of being the only one left. And then, at last, the current carries you toward an island, green and lush and far from everything. the loneliest island in all the world. You don't know it yet, washing up half dead on that shore, but you've just arrived at the place where you're going to spend the next 7 years of your life, not as a prisoner in chains, as something stranger and softer and, in its own way, harder to escape than any monster you've faced. You've reached the island of Calypso. She finds you on the shore, half drowned, and she takes you in. Calypso is a nymph, a goddess of that lonely island, and she lives there almost entirely alone, in a great cave wound about with climbing vines, wild grape heavy on the trellis, 4 springs running clear and cold in different directions through soft meadows of violet and wild parsley. It's beautiful. The stories linger on how beautiful it is, this hidden green place at the far edge of the world, so lovely that even a passing god would stop and marvel at it. Birds roost in the alders around her cave. A fire of sweet-smelling cedar burns low and fragrant, and her voice moves through it all as she works at her loom, singing the way Circe sang, the way these powers always seem to sing. And into this soft and quiet paradise you wash up, broken, the only survivor of everything, and Calypso nurses you back to life. And then she keeps you, not in a dungeon, not in chains. That's the thing about this last long trap. It isn't cruel, not on the surface. Calypso loves you or wants to, and she offers you everything. She offers to make you immortal. She offers you agelessness, to never grow old, never die, to stay young forever with her on that gentle island where nothing bad can ever reach you again. After the Cyclops and the giants and the drowned crew, after watching every man you led die in the sea, she's offering you the one thing that ends all suffering. Stay here. Be a god. Never lose anyone again, because there'll be no one left to lose and nothing left to fear. Just the cave and the springs and the cedar fire and forever. And you say no. Every day for 7 years you say no. Because it isn't home. This is the part of the whole story that says the most about who you are, I think, and it's quiet, not loud. No monster to outsmart, no trick to pull. Just a man offered eternal life and eternal comfort by a goddess on a paradise island, and turning it down over and over for 7 years, because none of it is the rocky little island where his wife is. The immortality doesn't tempt you. The endless comfort doesn't hold you the way the lotus flower or Circe's warm house held you, because you've learned the lesson those places taught, and you know now that comfort isn't the same as home, and that a paradise without the people you love is just a beautiful cage. So you spend your days on the shore. That's the image the stories leave you with. And it's a lonely one. Calypso would give you the whole world, and instead you sit on the rocks at the edge of her island, day after day, year after year, looking out over the water toward a horizon you can't cross, weeping the great hero of Troy, reduced to a homesick man staring at the sea. The nights you spend in the goddess's cave, because she wishes it, and she is a goddess, and you are only a man on her island, with no ship and no crew and no way to leave. But the days belong to your grief, to Penelope, to Ithaca, to a son who was a baby when you sailed and must be a grown man now, and who you have never, not once, seen with your own eyes. 7 years. Add them up with everything before. 10 years at Troy, years of wandering and monsters and loss. and now 7 more, stranded on an island so far from everything that no ship ever passes, held by a goddess who won't let you go and can't be argued with, while the world back home moves on without you and slowly forgets you were ever coming back. You have no way off this island. No ship, no crew, no trick that works on a goddess who holds all the power. For the first time in the whole story, your cleverness has nothing to offer at all. There's simply nothing to outwit. No plan that ends with you crossing that sea. You are stuck, completely and truly stuck, in the softest, loveliest, most hopeless place you've ever been. And if nothing changes, you'll sit on that shore looking at the water until you're an old man and then a dead one, and no one will ever know what became of you. Something has to change from the outside. And far away in the halls of the gods, it finally does, because you have not been entirely without friends up in that unseeable world. All this time one power has been on your side, the goddess of wisdom and cunning, who loves clever men and has always favored you, the one who watched you win the war with the wooden horse and admired the mind behind it. She has been waiting and watching, and at last she seizes her moment. Poseidon, the sea god who has hounded you the whole way, happens to travel far off to feast among a distant people, his attention turned away for a while. And in that window your patron goddess goes before Zeus, the king of the gods, and she pleads your case. She reminds him of you, of the man stranded all these years on Calypso's island, through no fault left unpunished. A good man, a suffering man, kept from a wife and a son who still wait for him. She asks Zeus to intervene, to finally, after everything, let Odysseus go home. And Zeus agrees. That's the turn the whole story has been waiting for, and it's granted quietly in a hall you'll never see, by gods deciding your fate the way they've decided it all along. Zeus sends his messenger down to Calypso's island with a command she cannot refuse. Goddess though she is, the king of the gods orders her to release you, to let you go, to give up the immortal companion she wanted to keep forever, because it is fated that you not die on her island, but return to your own home and your own people. Calypso is heartbroken, and she doesn't hide it. She's given you everything, offered you the stars, and now she's ordered to hand you back to the sea and the mortal life and the wife she can never compete with, because you'll always choose the human woman on the rocky island over the goddess in paradise. There's a real sorrow in it, and the story doesn't pretend otherwise. But she obeys. She has to. And so she comes to you on your lonely shore, where you're sitting as always looking out at the water, and she tells you that it's over, that you can go home. She gives you tools and shows you to a stand of trees and helps you build a raft, a small rough vessel, one man's craft, nothing like the fleet you left Troy with, but enough. She gives you provisions, bread and water and wine and clothes, and she calls up a gentle wind to carry you on your way. And after 7 years, you push off from Calypso's island alone on a raft you built with your own hands, and you point it toward home at last. You're not there yet. Poseidon will come back and find you gone, and there will be one more storm, one more near drowning, before you touch the shore of the living world again. But the long imprisonment is finished. The curse has run most of its course. You've come home late, and you've come home broken, and you've come home alone. Every word of it true. What's left is the last stretch of water, and then the thing you've wanted through 20 years, and a fleet's worth of graves. Ithaca, Penelope, the rock, home. You sit on your little raft under the stars, steering by them the way Calypso taught you. The loneliest man alive pointed finally in the right direction, and somewhere over that dark water is an island and a hall, and a woman who has been waiting so long that almost everyone has told her to give up. She hasn't given up. You don't know that yet. But she hasn't, and the two of you are about to find out what's left of the life you left behind. You left behind. The last storm nearly finishes what all the others started. Your days out from Calypso's island, alone on your little raft, when Poseidon comes back from his distant feast and looks down and sees you free, sees you sailing home after all his years of effort to prevent exactly this. And he's furious. He gathers the clouds, he stirs the sea with his trident, he sends the winds crashing against each other, and he throws one final storm at you, the worst yet, determined to drown you within sight of the end. The waves smash your raft to pieces beneath you. You're flung into the water again, sinking under the weight of the clothes Calypso gave you, and for a while it truly looks as though the sea will win at the very last, but you don't drown. A sea goddess takes pity on you and gives you a magic veil to wrap around yourself that keeps you afloat. And a friendly wind and your patron goddess calm the worst of the water, and after 2 days and 2 nights struggling in the waves, 2 days, battered and freezing and refusing to sink, you're finally washed up, naked and half dead and crusted with brine, on yet another shore. But this shore is different. This is the land of the Phaeacians, and the Phaeacians are the kindest people you'll meet in the whole long story. A gentle, prosperous, seafaring people who live at ease, far from monsters and war, in a beautiful city by the sea. And after everything the world has thrown at you, you finally land somewhere that means you no harm at all. It's a young woman who finds you, a princess named Nausicaa, who has come down to the river with her maids to wash clothes and play, and who doesn't run screaming from the wild, naked, salt-crusted stranger who staggers out of the bushes, but instead, bravely and kindly, gives you clothing and food, and directs you to her parents' palace to ask for help. And her parents, the king and queen of the Phaeacians, take you in as an honored guest, without even knowing your name. They feast you. They give you a place at their table. They treat a shipwrecked stranger the way the Cyclops and the giants never did. With this sacred hospitality your whole world is supposed to run on, and so rarely does. And at their feast, something happens that finally breaks you open. A blind bard stands up to entertain the hall, and he sings of all the songs in the world, the song of the Trojan War. He sings of the great deeds at Troy, and of the wooden horse, and of the cleverest of the Greek kings whose idea it was. He sings your story, not knowing you're sitting right there, and you, the man in the song, pull your cloak over your face and weep, because it's your whole lost world rendered into a tale for entertainment. All those men now dead, all that suffering turned to a pretty evening's song. The king notices your tears, and gently, kindly, asks who you are that this song should move you so. And so you tell them. Everything. This is the frame around the whole middle of your story. In a way, sitting in the Phaeacians' warm hall, safe at last, telling these gentle strangers the entire tale of your wandering. The Cyclops, the Lotus Eaters, Circe and the pigs, the land of the dead and your mother's ghost, the sirens, Scylla taking 6 men, the cattle of the sun and Zeus is lightning, and the drowning of your whole crew, and Calypso and the 7 lost years. You lay it all out for them. The full account of how a short trip home from Troy became a decade of loss, and they listen in amazement, hardly believing a single man could have survived so much. And when you've finished, when they've heard the whole terrible journey, the Phaeacians do the thing you've been unable to do for yourself for 20 years. They take you home. They're the finest sailors in the world, with swift magical ships that need no steering, and they load their best vessel with gifts for you, treasure, bronze, gold, fine cloth, more wealth than you carried away from Troy, and they lay you down in the ship, and their crew rows out into the night, and you, exhausted past all endurance, finally safe, finally believed, finally going home, fall into the deepest sleep of your life as their ship carries you across the last stretch of water. You sleep like a dead man, like a man setting down a weight he's carried for 10 years, while the magic ship cuts silently through the dark toward the one place in the world you've been trying to reach. And while you sleep, they bring you to Ithaca. They carry your sleeping body ashore and lay you gently on the beach of your own island, with all your gifts stacked beside you. And then they sail away home themselves, and you don't wake for any of it, so that when you finally open your eyes, you're simply there, on a shore, 20 years after you sailed away. Home. Except you don't recognize it. That's the strange, aching thing about this arrival. You've dreamed of this shore for 20 years, and when you finally wake on it, a mist lies over everything, and the island looks foreign to you, and for a terrible moment you don't even know where you are. You think the Phaeacians have tricked you and left you in some strange land after all. You stand on the beach of your own kingdom, the place you sacrificed everything to reach, and you don't know it's home. It's your patron goddess who reveals it to you. She appears. She's been guiding you all along, and now, with you finally on Ithacan soil, she comes to you openly. She clears the mist. She shows you the harbor, the cave, the mountain, and tells you the truth. This is Ithaca, your home. You've actually made it. And then, before you can even take it in, she gives you the harder news. Because getting home was only half the trouble. Your home, she tells you, is not the home you left. While you've been gone these 20 years, your hall has been invaded. Not by an army, by suitors. Word spread long ago that Odysseus was surely dead, lost at sea, never coming back. And so the young noblemen of Ithaca and the islands around it descended on your house to court your wife, to marry Penelope, and with her to take your kingdom. And not politely, not a few respectful callers. More than 100 of them. The stories count them. 108 suitors, crowding your hall day after day, eating your food, drinking your wine, slaughtering your livestock, insulting your household, living in your home as if they already own it, all of them, pressuring Penelope to give up on you and choose one of them as her new husband and the new king of Ithaca. You've come home to find your house full of enemies who think you're dead, devouring everything you own, waiting for your wife to surrender, and you're one man. One man just off the beach against 108. This is not a fight you can win by force. You know that instantly. It's the Cyclops' cave all over again. The same problem your whole life keeps handing you. Too many enemies, too few friends, no way to simply overpower them. If you march up to your hall and announce that the king has returned, 108 armed young men will cut you down before you reach the door, and Penelope will be a widow in truth. And everything you survived will have been for nothing. So you can't announce yourself. You have to do what you've always done. You have to be cleverer than the situation. You have to find out who in your own house is still loyal, and get close to your enemies without their knowing who you are, and pick the exact right moment. And until that moment comes, no one, not even your own wife, can know that Odysseus has come home. Your goddess understands this, and she helps you. She disguises you. She transforms you into an old beggar, withers your skin, grays your hair, dresses you in rags, turns the great king into a bent, ragged old wanderer that no one would look at twice, so that you can walk into your own kingdom completely unrecognized, and watch and learn and wait. You're home. After 20 years, you're finally home, and you have to enter your own hall in rags, as a beggar, and let 108 men mock you, and say nothing, and reveal nothing, and bide your time. But you won't be entirely alone, because there's someone on this island who has been waiting for you almost as long as Penelope has a young man you've never met, who was a baby in a cradle when you left, and who has grown up these 20 years with only stories of a father who never came back, your son, Telemachus, and the goddess is about to bring the two of you together for the very first time. You meet your son in a swineherd's hut. That's where the goddess sends you first, not up to the great hall, but down to a humble farm on the edge of your land, to the hut of an old swineherd named Eumaeus, a servant who has tended your pigs faithfully for all 20 years you've been gone. And here's the first warmth you've felt in a long time. This old man, who has no idea the ragged beggar at his door is his lost king, takes you in anyway. He shares his food and his fire with a stranger, because that's what a decent man does. And he speaks of his missing master, of you, with such loyalty and such grief that it nearly undoes you to hear it. You sit there in disguise, listening to a servant mourn you, testing quietly whether the loyalty in your own house has survived, and finding in this one old man at least that it has, and it's to this same hut that Telemachus comes, because your son, it turns out, hasn't simply been sitting at home all these years. He's a grown man now, 20 years old, and while you were on Calypso's island, the goddess had already begun stirring him to action, sending him off on a journey of his own to the mainland to seek news of whether his father was alive or dead, to try to become the man his absent father never got to raise. He's been to see the old kings who fought at Troy, asking after you, growing up on the road, and now he's come home, and he comes to the swineherd's hut first, and he walks in the door, and there you are, your son, the baby you last saw as a red, screaming newborn, standing before you as a young man, and he doesn't know you at all. You have to hold yourself together. You can't reveal yourself in front of the swineherd, not yet, so you sit there and watch your own son, this stranger who is your child, and you say nothing, and then the goddess gives you the moment. She draws the old swineherd away on an errand, and for the first time in 20 years you're alone with your son. And she touches you and lifts the disguise just for this, just for him, and turns you from the ragged old beggar back into yourself, tall and strong, Odysseus as you truly are. And Telemachus, seeing a beggar transform into a commanding stranger before his eyes, is terrified. He thinks you must be a god, and he shrinks back in fear. And you tell him. You say the words, "I am your father. I am Odysseus. I've come home." He doesn't believe it at first. How could he? He's grown up his whole life with a father who is only a name, only a story, a man everyone assumed was dead. To have that man suddenly standing in front of him claiming to be real is too much to take in, and he protests that no mortal could change his shape like that you must be some spirit set to torment him. But you tell him the truth of it, that it's the goddess's work, that you're no god, only his father, home at last, after 20 years of war and wandering. And slowly it breaks over him that it's real, that the father he never knew is standing before him, alive, and the two of you weep. The stories say you both broke down and cried, holding each other, 20 years of absence collapsing into a single moment, a son who grew up fatherless, and a father who missed the entire childhood of his only child. Finally, in the same room, knowing each other at last. It's the reunion the whole long journey has been building toward, and it's quiet, just the two of you in a farmhouse, no crowd, no ceremony, just a father and a son. But you can't stay in that moment long, because you've come home into danger, and now there are two of you facing it. And so, father and son together, you begin to plan. You tell Telemachus everything, the situation in the hall, the 108 suitors, the impossibility of fighting them all in the open. And you swear him to secrecy, the strictest secrecy, because your whole plan depends on no one knowing you've returned. Not the servants, not the townspeople. And here's the hardest part, the one that shows how carefully you're playing this. Not even Penelope. Not yet. Not even your wife, who has waited 20 years, can be told that you're home, because you can't risk her joy giving you away, can't risk a single loose word reaching the suitors before you're ready. You'll go up to the hall still in your beggar's disguise, and Telemachus will pretend not to know you, and together you'll watch and wait and prepare, until the moment is right. And while you're planning, you learn what Penelope has done all these years, how she's held these men off for so long without a husband to protect her. And it's a trick worthy of you, honestly. It's the cleverest thing anyone in your family did while you were gone, and it tells you exactly why you married her. Years ago, when the suitors first descended and demanded she choose one of them, Penelope couldn't refuse outright. She was one woman against 100 aggressive men, with no way to simply throw them out. So she didn't refuse. She delayed. She told them she would choose a new husband. Yes, but only after she finished weaving a grand burial shroud for your aging father, a proper funeral cloth for when his time came, because it would be shameful for her to remarry while leaving that sacred duty undone. It was a reason no one could argue with. Of course she must finish it first. And so every day she sat at her great loom in the hall and wove, working at the shroud where they could all see her diligence. And every night, in secret, she unraveled everything she'd woven that day. So the shroud was never finished. It couldn't be finished. Every morning she'd weave, and every night she'd quietly pick the threads back out. And the work never grew, and the suitors waited. And the months turned into years, all of them fooled by a woman patiently pretending to make progress on a cloth she undid in the dark. For 3 years it worked. 3 years she held off 108 men with nothing but a loom and her own cunning, until finally one of her maids betrayed the secret, and the suitors caught her unraveling it one night and forced her to finish it. And now the shroud is done, and her excuse is used up, and the suitors are pressing harder than ever for her to choose. And that's the crisis you've walked home into. But think about what it means. 20 years. For 20 years your wife has believed or hoped or simply refused to give up when everyone around her insisted you were dead and told her to move on. She outwitted a hall full of men to buy time for a husband almost no one believed was still alive. She kept your home and your son and your bed for you across 2 decades, on nothing but faith and stubbornness and her own sharp mind. She's every bit as clever as you are, and every bit as stubborn, and she's been fighting her own long, quiet war this whole time, without a single monster to make it a good story, just 108 men in her house, and no one coming to help Dot. You go up to the hall. You walk into your own home for the first time in 20 years, disguised as a ragged beggar leaning on a staff, and the sight of it would break a lesser man's composure. Your great hall, full of these arrogant young lords, sprawled at your tables, eating your food, drinking your wine, ordering your servants around, treating your home as their own, and you have to shuffle in among them as a nobody and beg for scraps at your own table and endure it. Some of the suitors mock you. One of them throws his stool at you, strikes you. This beggar who dares to be in their way strikes the king of Ithaca in his own hall and laughs. And you take it. You swallow every insult. You absorb every blow. You keep your eyes down and your rage locked away, because it isn't time. Not yet. But you're watching. Every moment you're watching, marking which suitors are the cruelest, and which servants have stayed loyal, and how the hall is laid out and where the weapons are. Filing it all away the way you filed away the name of the man who exposed your madness all those years ago, the way you've always done. Being clever one more time when everything in you wants to simply strike. And there, across the hall, is Penelope, your wife. 20 years older and still herself, moving among the men who want to replace you, holding her ground. You're in the same room with her at last, close enough to speak to, and you can't tell her. You have to look at her as a stranger looks and let her look back at a beggar and keep the secret a little longer. But not much longer now, because Penelope, worn down at last, exhausted from 20 years of waiting and 3 years of delay, and a shroud that's finally finished, is about to announce that she set a contest for the suitors, a test of strength and skill to decide, once and for all, which of them she marry. And the contest she's about to choose, without knowing her husband is standing in rags a few feet away, involves one particular object, a great bow. A bow that hasn't been drawn in 20 years, a bow that belongs to Odysseus, a bow that no other man alive has the strength to bend. Everything you've survived, Troy, the Cyclops, the drowned crew, the 7 lost years, the 20-year road home, all of it has been leading, though none of them know it, to this one contest, in this one hall, with this one bow, and you're the only man in the world who can string it. Penelope brings out the bow herself. She goes to the storeroom deep in the house, and she takes down the great backward curving bow that has hung untouched for 20 years, your bow, the one you left behind when you sailed for Troy, and she carries it into the hall, and she weeps a little as she holds it, this thing of her husband's that he never came back to claim, and she sets the terms of the contest to the assembled suitors. Whichever of you, she tells them, can string this bow, and then shoot an arrow cleanly through a row of 12 axe heads, lined up in a row, that man I'll marry. That's the test. String the bow, make the shot, win the queen and the kingdom. She has no idea she's just built the perfect trap, and that the man it's built for is sitting in rags a few feet away, watching, because that bow is not an ordinary weapon. It takes tremendous strength even to bend it far enough to loop the string over the end, and no one has drawn it in 20 years, because the only man strong enough to do it easily was you. And now, one by one, the suitors line up to try. These proud young lords, the strongest and fittest men of the islands, each certain he'll be the one. They take up the great bow, and they brace it, and they heave, and they strain, and they cannot bend it, not even close. Man after man, the fittest of them sweating and grunting and hauling with everything they have, and the bow won't give. Some of them even warm the wood by the fire and grease it, trying to make it more flexible, and still it defeats them. The whole hall full of Penelope's suitors, and not one of them can so much as string the bow, let alone shoot it, and you sit in your corner in your beggar's rags, watching the men who've devoured your home fail one after another to lift the weapon that's yours. While they're failing, you slip outside for a moment, and you find the 2 servants you've quietly decided you can trust, the loyal old swineherd and a loyal cowherd, and you reveal yourself to them. You show them a scar on your leg, an old scar they'd know, proof of who you are, and you tell them the truth. The beggar is Odysseus, the king has come home, and tonight the reckoning comes, and you give them their parts to play. You tell the women of the house to be shut away safe behind locked doors. You tell your allies to bar the doors of the hall at the signal, so that no suitor can escape once it begins. You've studied this room for days now, and you know exactly how it has to go dot. And then you go back inside, still the beggar, and you ask if you might try the bow. The suitors are outraged. A ragged old beggar wanting to attempt the contest that's defeated all of them? They mock you, they tell you to know your place. They're insulted that a nobody would even ask. But your son, Telemachus, playing his part, insists. It's his house, he says, and he'll decide who handles the bow. And he'll let the old stranger try. What's the harm? No beggar's going to marry the queen anyway. And over the suitors' jeering objections, the great bow is placed into your hands, and the hall goes quiet, because there's something in how you hold it. You turn the bow over in your hands, this weapon you haven't touched in 20 years, checking it the way a master checks a familiar tool, and the suitors' laughter dies in their throats as they watch this ragged old man handle the bow that beat them all with the ease of someone who's done it 10,000 times. And then, without apparent strain, the stories say as easily as a musician slips a new string onto a lyre, You bend the great bow and loop the string over the end and draw it taut. You've strung it. In one smooth motion, the thing not one of them could do at all, and you pluck the string, and it sings, a clear high note ringing through the silent hall. And in that instant, everyone understands that something has gone terribly wrong for them, though they don't yet know what. You set an arrow to the string, and you loose it cleanly straight through all 12 axe heads in a perfect line. The shot no one else could even attempt, the impossible shot made on the first try by a beggar, and then you throw off the rags. You strip away the disguise and leap up onto the great threshold of the hall in full view of them all, and the goddess restores you to your true self. No beggar now, but Odysseus the king, come home, standing over them with a bow in your hands, and your son at your side, and the doors of the hall barred behind them. And you tell them who you are. You tell the 108 men who ate your food and drank your wine and courted your wife and mocked you in your own home, that the master of the house has returned, and that the reckoning is here. There's a moment where it hasn't quite landed, where they're still processing that the beggar is the king, that Odysseus is real, that he's standing between them and the only door out, armed, with vengeance in his eyes. And then it lands, and the panic takes them. But there's nowhere to run. The doors are barred. Their own weapons have been quietly taken away from the hall beforehand. You saw to that. And the man they thought was dead, the greatest warrior of the age, the mind that broke Troy, is standing over them with a bow and a full quiver and 20 years of reasons. What happens next is the reckoning, and I'll tell it the way this quiet hour asks for, not lingering on the horror of it, but not pretending it away either. The suitors have wronged your house for years, and now they answer for it. You and your son and your 2 loyal servants, 4 against 108, hold the hall. The bow does its work first, and then when the arrows are gone, the spears. Your enemies scramble for weapons and find few. They try the doors and find them barred. They try to rush you and fall. It is a grim and terrible thing, a house turned to a battlefield, and when it's finished, the suitors who filled your hall for years fill it no longer. Every one of them who wronged your home has paid the price the age demanded. The house is yours again, silent now and heavy with what's happened, but yours, and there's a grief folded into even this victory. If you stop to feel it, because this is what the whole journey was always driving toward, and it's not joy, exactly. It's justice, and justice this old is a hard, heavy thing. You came home late and broken and alone, and even your homecoming had to be bought with a hall full of the dead. The curse the giant called down on you followed you all the way to your own door. But it's over now. The trap you sprang was the last one you'll ever need to spring. The cleverest man in Greece has used his cleverness one final time, and won back the only thing he ever actually wanted, his home, and upstairs, behind a locked door, kept safely away from all of it, is the person he wanted it for, a woman who has waited 20 years, who wove and unraveled a shroud to hold off the men now lying silent below, who never quite gave up on a husband the whole world swore was dead. She doesn't know yet that the battle is over. She doesn't know that the beggar was her husband. She's about to be told that Odysseus has come home and reclaimed his hall, and after 20 years of false hope, and cruel rumors and men lying to her to win her, she is not going to believe it easily. The last test of your whole long journey isn't the bow or the suitor's dot. It's convincing your own wife that you're really you, that you're really you. The old nurse runs upstairs to wake her. She's an ancient servant, the woman who nursed you as a baby and knew you the moment she saw the scar on your leg while washing the beggar's feet days before. One of the very few you allowed to know the secret early. And now she hurries up to Penelope's room, breathless with joy, to tell her the impossible news. "Wake up," she says. "Come and see. Odysseus has come home. He's here, he's really here, and the suitors who plagued you all these years are gone, and your husband is downstairs in his own hall at last. Dot." And Penelope does not believe her. 20 years. 20 years of people bringing her news of Odysseus, travelers claiming they'd seen him, beggars inventing stories of him to earn a meal, rumors that flickered up and died, hope offered and snatched away over and over, until she learned, out of pure self-protection, to stop believing any of it. So when the old nurse tells her that her husband has miraculously returned and slain 108 men single-handed, Penelope's clever, guarded, 20 years disappointed heart simply won't accept it. "It must be a god who did this," she says. "It must be a trick, or a mistake, or wishful nonsense. Odysseus is dead. He's been dead a long time. Don't torment me with hope." But she comes down anyway. Slowly, cautiously, unable to stay away, she comes down to the hall, and there she sees him. You, sitting across the room in the firelight, no longer a beggar, your true self restored. And she stops, and she stares, and she says nothing. This is the part that troubles everyone who hears the story, including your own son, and it's the part that shows most clearly who Penelope is, because she doesn't run to you. She doesn't throw her arms around you weeping. She sits down across the hall, and she looks at you, silent and searching, studying your face, and one moment she seems to know you, and the next she seems full of doubt, and she cannot make herself cross the room. Telemachus is angry with her for it. "How can you be so cold," he says, "so hard-hearted, when your husband has finally come home after 20 years? Any other wife would run to him, but Penelope isn't any other wife, and she isn't cold. She's careful, because think of what she's learned in 20 years. She's watched 108 men try to deceive her, try to worm their way into her husband's place with lies and charm and false promises. She's survived by trusting no one, by testing every claim, by being every bit as cautious and cunning as the husband she lost. And now a man sits in her hall claiming to be that husband, and the whole world has fooled her before, and gods can wear any face they choose. She's not going to open her heart to him on someone else's word, not after everything. She's going to be sure, completely, unshakably sure. And she has a way to be sure that no impostor and no god in disguise could ever pass. A secret that only she and the real Odysseus share. So she sets him a test. One last test, quiet and subtle, and he doesn't even realize at first that it's a test. She turns to the old nurse. They're in front of you, and she gives an ordinary household instruction. "Make up the bed for our guest," she says. "Move the great bed out of the bedchamber, the sturdy bedstead Odysseus built with his own hands, and set it up out here with blankets, and fleeces so the stranger can rest, and you react before you can stop yourself, because you know something about that bed that no one else in the world knows. You built it yourself long ago, and you built it around a living olive tree. You made one of its bedposts from the trunk of an olive that was rooted in the ground, and you constructed the whole bedchamber around it, so that the bed cannot be moved. It's fixed. It's part of the earth itself. To move that bed, someone would have had to cut through the living trunk. And so when Penelope calmly suggests dragging it out of the room as though it were any ordinary piece of furniture, you protest, sharply, without thinking, demanding to know who has moved your bed, who could have cut through the olive tree you built it around, because that bed was made immovable by your own hands, and no man could shift it unless he'd taken an axe to its very root. And Penelope's heart finally breaks open, because that was the secret. That was the one thing only the true Odysseus could possibly know, the hidden construction of the marriage bed the two of them shared, a secret kept between only the two of them for all these years. No impostor could know it. No god wearing your face could know it. Only her husband. Only the real man. She laid the trap, and you sprang it without even knowing. And in doing so you proved beyond any doubt that you are exactly who you claim to be. And now she runs to you. Now, finally sure at last, she crosses the hall and throws her arms around you, weeping, and holds you as though she'll never let go. And you hold her, and the two of you break down together. 20 years of waiting and grief and disappointment and hope pouring out at once. The stories say she clung to you and cried, and that the sight of you was as welcome to her as land is to drowning sailors who swum through a storm and finally, against all hope, feel solid ground beneath their feet. That's the image they leave you with, that being back in each other's arms felt like surviving a shipwreck and reaching shore, which is fitting for a man who did exactly that, over and over to get home to her. Two clever, stubborn, patient people who each fought their own long war, you against the whole wide sea, she against a hall full of men, reunited at last in the home they never stopped believing in. Him tested by monsters and gods, her testing him one final time with a bed, because that's who they are, and that's why they belong together. And the goddess, watching over the reunion, does one last kindness. She holds back the dawn, lengthens the night, so that the two of you have time, after 20 years apart, to simply talk, to lie together in the immovable bed and tell each other everything. You tell Penelope all of it, Troy, and the Cyclops, and Circe, and the land of the dead, and the sirens, and the drowning of your crew, and the 7 long years on Calypso's island. And she tells you everything she endured, the suitors, the shroud, the 20 years of holding the line alone. All the long strands of the story, both halves of it, finally woven back together in the dark of your own home. And there is peace, not perfect peace. Not immediately. The families of the slain suitors are angry, and there's a final reckoning to settle with them, one last flare of conflict on the island. But it's the goddess who ends it. She comes down and imposes peace between you and the suitors' kin, commands both sides to lay down their arms and let the bloodshed end, and they obey her, because when the gods say enough, it's enough. And so at last, truly, Ithaca is quiet. The war is over. The wandering is over. The waiting is over. The king is home, and the hall is his again. And the kingdom is at peace. And even the great enemy, even Poseidon, the sea god who hounded you across 10 years and drowned your fleet, and threw storm after storm in your path, even his anger, at the very last, runs its course. The blind prophet told you, long ago in the land of the dead, that after you reclaimed your home, you would have one final duty to perform to make peace with the god of the sea, a journey inland, an offering, a reconciliation, and that once it was done, Poseidon's wrath would be satisfied, and the sea would trouble you no more. And so the day comes when that too is settled, and the god who pursued you across half the world finally lets you go. The storms end. The curse is fully spent. The debt for the giant's eye paid at last, in full, and the prophet promised you one thing more. There in the dark at the edge of the world, he promised that after all of it, after the wandering and the reckoning and the peace made with the sea, you would grow old gently, in comfort among a people who loved you, and that death, when it finally came for you, would come softly from the sea and a rich old age, with everything around you at peace. So that's where we leave you. Not on a battlefield, not on a storm-tossed raft, not in a monster's cave or a witch's hall or a lonely island at the edge of the world. At home, on your rock, the goats on the hill, the salt air off the water, the good roof, the hall that's yours again, your son grown and beside you, your wife, clever and stubborn and faithful, asleep in the bed you built around a living tree. 20 years of war and wandering behind you, all of it, finally, behind you. The smartest man in Greece spent 10 years winning a war, and 10 more finding his way back from it. He lost a fleet. He lost every man he led. He lost 20 years he could never get back, and in the end, he got home, which it turns out was the only thing he was ever really trying to do. The island is quiet. The sea is calm, and for the first time in 20 years there is nowhere else he needs to be. He's home. And he can finally rest. And he can finally rest.